February 1945, the Yalta Conference. A meeting in Yalta with Churchill, Roosevelt and Stalin discussed that Germany would be divided amongst them. Stalin had the key negotiating point as Soviet troops covered the Eastern Europe. Poland was also a main discussion point as Stalin believed that only a strong communist government would be able to protect the USSR, as Poland is often used to get to them. Also, the decision to form the United Nations was confirmed. This was the only point at which all three parties agreed on enthusiastically. The main objectives for both Stalin and Churchill was to capture Berlin, but Roosevelt did not agree, so Americans went south to Dresden, ensuring that the Soviet troops arrived in Berlin first. May 1945. The German surrender of Soviet troops reached Berlin and Hitler commits suicide. July and August. Potsdam Conference. The meeting of the three main occupants in Germany: Truman after Roosevelt's death, Attlee after the general election, and Stalin. France is absent, but they are still given land. April 1946. The SED formed in the Soviet zone, made up of the SPD and the KPD, to make one united extreme left Communist Party. 1947, January. The British and American zones combined to form Bizonia. June 1947. The Marshall Aid Plan is announced, set up by Marshall, Truman's Secretary of State. He offered financial support to the program for economic recovery in Europe. Bevan agreed, but the Soviets rejected it. A meeting in Paris confirmed it in September, and 16 Western European nations agreed on the 4-year plan. 1948, June. The decisions were made by Western allies that an independent West Germany could be created, federal state. Also, the currency was reformed in the Western zone. 1949, October. The German Democratic Republic is formally announced. Germany is now officially divided. It's June 1948. The Soviets have been raising the tension in Berlin in an attempt to get the Western Allies to withdraw from what it conceives to be their land. On the night of the 23rd of June, the world witnesses the start of the Cold War, and the actions will divide Germany in two for way longer than discussed at the Potsdam Convention. At midnight on the 23rd of June, the Soviets sever the electricity to Western Berlin. At 6 o'clock on the 24th of June, the Soviets sever the road, rail and barge traffic, at the same time as stopping transfer of all supplies from the Soviet sector. It's the 24th of June. Berlin is under siege. The Berlin blockade has begun.
There was only one option left open to the Western Allies. They were adamant they would not give in to the demands of the USSR, and that way was up.
There were 3 air corridors open to the Western Allies, 2 to the British and 1 to the Americans. The British corridors were over relatively flat ground, whilst the American one was over hilly ground, which rises to about 3,000 foot out of the 10,000 they could climb to. The Allies used C-47 and Dakotas, and a few Avro Yorks, and it was established that the RAF and the UAF could provide only 700 tons out of the 13,500 tons needed to keep the people of Berlin going. In the first stage of the airlift, from the 30th of June to the 3rd of July, they failed to meet their target of 160 sorties per day, mainly due to bad weather and lack of manpower. However, in the second section of the airlift, with the addition of another squadron of Yorks, they went from 474 tons on the 6th to 995 tons on the 18th. Each aircraft carried approximately 4.5 tons into Berlin, containing flour, milk, sweets, medicine and fuel. and it bought out manufactured produce to keep the economy going. During the harsh German winters, the airlift transported 2 million tons of its supplies in 270,000 flights. The blockade was lifted on the 12th of March 1949, although the airlift continued until the end of September that year. The Marshall Plan was a very generous package of economic aid to those European countries which were prepared to meet the certain conditions, e.g. economic cooperation. West Germany was a principal beneficiary of the Marshall Aid. The aid included the modernizing of industry and business practices using high-efficient models. The Marshall Aid helped the people of West Germany because it installed a sense of hope and self-reliance. The main reason why the USA helped European countries was because it reduced the threat of communism, and it helped countries economically and also helped to boost its own economy. The black market was so prevalent that in June 1948 a currency reform introducing the new Deutschmark had to be introduced into the Western zone before American aid could be efficiently introduced. The Soviets refused to effect the currency reform in the Soviet zone, and within a few days of the introduction of the Deutschmark, an Eastern German mark was introduced into Eastern Berlin. Overall, the change of currency stopped rampant inflation.
Right, let's get started.
Before we begin, let us pay respect to the French representative who unfortunately is absent today and give them some land to compensate their losses.
Yes, that's exactly the right course of action to take. What do you think, Stalin?
I don't really care as long as my people get the compensation they deserve. Look at what Germany did to the USSR, and all you can really worry about is if the French are okay.
Well, we are well aware of what has occurred in the USSR, but we have other concerns as well. It was not just you that was affected by this war, Stalin.
As I am constantly reminded, and let me remind you, Prime Minister Attlee, that without the Soviet troops, Berlin would still have been under German control. You took your time arriving, and therefore the city should be mine.
Let's leave Berlin until last, shall we? There will be enough of Germany to be occupied and improved by us, my friends.
You are right, President Truman. Let us get back to business. After all, it would have been what the late President Roosevelt would have wanted.
So, this is how we have decided, although the French cannot be at this meeting, we have agreed to give them the territory in the southwestern Germany. Is that right, Attlee?
Indeed. Although it was originally allotted for our nations, we do not mind giving up this territory to France.
I'm satisfied with my share also. I'm pleased that we could come to an arrangement about the reparations. The fact that USSR was so badly treated by these German miscreants, and we have less industrial production as well as a natural resource than you do. This being so, I'm exceedingly glad that we can take additional reparations from these areas.
Are you happy with your share, Attlee?
Exceedingly so, my friend. Now, I suggest we return to the subject of Berlin.
At last. As I mentioned earlier, due to the fact that the USSR was severely damaged by the war, me and my people want our revenge. It's time that we take our own back.
I'm afraid I don't agree with you, Mr. Stalin. Berlin should be under a full power control, not just one. Therefore, we all have a share in the capital city.
Yes, this is a much fairer idea. After all, there is a lot to do. We must re-educate these people after the monstrosity of fascism.
The parts of the city which belong to myself or yourself can be treated by the said forces as said fit. Am I right, Mr. Attlee?
Yes, I suppose that's true.
Hello, I'm Joseph Stalin, and I believe in communism. Here in Russia we just have one party, my own party, and we believe in sharing. We basically control all of the things, all of the aspects of your life. We control culture, so what you hear on the radio, read in the paper. We control the youth, we control women, and we control the trade unions. And what we're more intent on than anything else is we're intent on getting revenge from Germany. They killed lots and lots of our Jewish people, and we're not happy about it. So over the next few months, if you live in Western Germany, we're going to bleed you dry. Thank you. I'm Joseph Stalin. Vote for me.
Hello, I'm President Truman, and I occupy the west part of the Western Germany, and I believe in democracy. The main party in my zone is the Christian Democratic Party, and we are firm believers in God and how he shall bring our salvation after this monstrous attack of the Jewish race. This year, 1946, the KPD banned because we don't want the communists in our half. They're bad, and we're already trying to re-educate the people after the extreme fascist views. And yeah, so if you want to be a political party on our side, you need to be based locally or regionally, and then apply to be a party. And we check you and everything because we do not want another repeat performance of last time. Thank you.
It served that the Americans would stand up to the Soviets and the communist threat, leading to the beginning of the Cold War, and saw Germany stay divided as the battleground. With Germany now divided and the Americans with nuclear capability, we look into what happened when the USSR gained nuclear capability.